Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. Welcome back to the show, Stuart. Stuart, we have a new finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, who was the Deputy Prime Minister and also negotiated the new North American Free Trade Deal. So is she the right person for the job, and what kind of challenges does she face?
Well, not only does she have those accomplishments within government, this is someone who's been on the global economic stage for pretty much her whole career as a journalist. I think quite well respected before she came in. That was part of the luster when she ran for office initially. So, you know, you've got someone with a pretty solid track record in economic areas. There will be some criticism that she lacks the finance direct experience, such as Morneau had, where he is, you know, very much the prototypical Bay Street character. He's got his own successful firm. He mixes in the clubs and boardrooms of Bay Street and where the big decisions are made in the Canadian economy. Freeland is not known for having that and is probably a little bit of an outsider in that world. Thus, having the reins of that job mean that she has access to that first woman history is going to be seen.
Stuart, you broke up there.
Positive step.
Stuart, you're breaking up.
I'm breaking up, eh? Okay. Where did I start breaking up? Let me just go back
you
over
said,
that.
well, yeah, she has. Okay, you said she doesn't have the big business connections.
Yeah, so I'll start. You know, yeah. So she may not have the same sort of big business cred that Morneau has, but don't mistake her as someone without exposure to this world. She's definitely someone with a lot of experience, and being Deputy Prime Minister going into this gives her some stature in cabinet and caucus at a time when there's a lot of stresses and self-imposed scandals that have beset the government. At the same time, they have to govern the finances for all Canadians, so you have to hope there's some success there, even as other issues are dealt with through politics.
And perhaps it is better that she isn't directly connected to Bay Street.
Well, it could be.
You know, she was born in a small town, Peace River, Alberta, 500 kilometers north of Edmonton. And people from up there tend to be a little more independent. You have to be.
Yeah, and this is a government that hasn't been noteworthy in having a strong Western voice. I think it's because there's a lack of MPs to choose from the West, and so it's tended to skew towards those traditional high population centers in central Canada, which at times we feel that as a negative in the West, because it's clear that no one's really interested in our issues, or I'm familiar with the phenomenon of the world shrinking to the size of a few square miles once one gets to Parliament Hill. So they have to work hard to overcome that. And if Freeland's got a bit of a perspective there, I think that could be helpful. Hopefully she remains true to her roots and brings forward these concerns of small communities in the West.
And we'll have some ideas for her to work on to get the economy and jobs going again when Stewart Muir returns.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Value from success. Growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stuart, today ResourceWorks has released a task force report to get things going again. Can you tell us the name of the report and go over some of these ideas?
Well, at ResourceWorks, we've been working since May, really April, on economic questions in the recovery. That's how long we've known that there were big problems looming. And we struck the task force for real jobs, real recovery a couple of months back out of that work. And now, after 35 organizations, numerous advisors have worked through their summers from wherever they were, both working from home because of the pandemic and also people taking downtime in the summer. But we had people across the country adding their expertise to our work because we wanted to come up with some ideas on how to secure Canada's economic future. And we see natural resources as being at the heart of that, because it's something that we really do have control over and we can create real outcomes.
Is one of the biggest problems using natural resources for an economic recovery the fact that you have to go through such lengthy approval processes to get anything done, and then a handful of people block a railway or a road somewhere, and then the government changes the rules to appease those people? Does it make it frustrating to even propose a project and then get it done?
Yeah, it definitely does. You know, the fact is that our natural resource assets exist in fixed places. We have to go to where they are, whether that's in the north, whether that's in Northern Shield, whether it's in the Athabasca oil sand deposits, wherever it may be, we have to get ourselves there. That means transportation. It also means access to land. It means governments thinking carefully when they to make decisions that affect access to land.
Stuart, how many recommendations does your report have, and does it have some main points to hang those recommendations on?
Yeah, there's really three pillars to this, Jim. I'll tell you what those are. Number one, mobilizing resource prosperity. Number two, building meaningful employment. Number three, accelerating innovation and environmental competitiveness. And out of those three pillars, we've developed a total of 19 different recommendations. And I'm happy to talk about those in any amount of detail. But I think where we see the big picture emerging here is that by acting on our recommendations as part of Canada's economic recovery policy, the federal government has a chance now to ensure that our nation-building resource assets aid getting towards the environmental goals that this government especially is talking about, and at the same time help secure our country's economic future. And we can do those things if we follow our 19 recommendations.
What are some of those key recommendations?
Yeah, well, I think we would like to see the federal government out there publicly, vocally endorsing the Canadian Natural Resources brand. I mean, if you look at the emerging area of so-called ESG, which is environment, society, and governance, this is a way that the world of finance and investment is starting to measure how different countries do in terms of their performance on those issues. And Canada's right at the top, you know, in terms of environmental improvement, contrary to the kind of cottage industry we have of, you know, everything Canada can do and anything is terrible and we're awful and polluting the world. The reality is actually the opposite. You know, more innovation is happening here, but it's not recognized or celebrated. And I think that the federal government can do a lot to exercise leadership there. We also think that working in partnership with industries to improve all these policies is better than working separate from, and sometimes you get the impression that there is a sort of disconnect, and we can solve that. Another area we're seeing is the need to improve public and investor confidence in regulation and decision making. All of these experiences we've had in recent years, where there are great, lengthy, expensive processes to come to a decision on specific projects that just sort of fall apart. Companies withdraw. It doesn't even get to the end in a lot of cases. And that is not how it's meant to be. So we need a commitment to evidence, science-based, outcomes-based impact assessment decisions. And that includes more agile regulations, and we get into this in the report. It's quite a lengthy report with the detail for those who want the detail of how we can introduce these policies. One of the things we see emerging too is concerns about coordination, or I should say lack of coordination, between the provincial and territorial governments on legislative and regulatory priorities when it comes to dealings with Ottawa. And that surfaces again and again through our study, that you seem to have these two tracks that are moving differently, but the impact on investors is the same, and ultimately on workers, that we don't get to decisions because we've got this sort of jurisdictional overlap and confusion. So those are a couple of things, and this report, when it's released, is going to be talked about in Ottawa. We know it comes at a time when there's a buzz about thinking big and big ideas. We've got all kinds of other groups that are also trying to be influential in the current mix, who are asking for, in some cases, tens of billions of dollars to pursue the projects that they are advocating for. Our project is a little bit different at the Task Force for Real Jobs. It's more about getting out of the way, rather than taking a seriously stretched public purse and asking for more from it. So this is more, here's how you can step back or allow the regulations to exist so that private capital can come and do what it's equipped to do in the recovery. We've had support for this from labor unions, from First Nations, from industry associations, in a way that is more collaborative than anything I've ever seen in Canadian policy over my years of covering federal government as a journalist, of watching natural resource policy. And I think it's because we're at an inflection point where there's a broadening realization that if we don't get this right, our options as a country are sufficiently narrow that we could be looking at unintended and frankly rather unpleasant outcomes in economic terms. And so that's really a unifying factor in the diverse makeup of our organization, that there is a shared recognition that this is important stuff right now.
Yeah, and I always find it amazing people have no problem jumping into their pickup truck, organizing a protest on their cell phone, and then showing up and disrupting somebody's local economy. Did they ever think about what it took to get that truck there?
Well, that's it. Yeah, you see that quite in evidence. And so, I think offering a positive prescription for how we can do things is a way to get away from some of the conflict that comes from that kind of situation, where we do have, sometimes it looks like professional protesters who do nothing but move from one protest to the next over sometimes a whole career, and accumulating resources to do it as they go. Rather than kind of get mired in this ongoing resource conflict, I think the better way here is to find the things that enough people have in common, including the commitments on environmental performance. And not all of it is where it needs to be today. There's a recognition that work is required, but it doesn't mean don't do any work, which I think is the sort of unfortunate conclusion that a lot of people would come to. If there are complaints about this or concerns about that, it's well and good to have that discussion and then do the work. But I think what we are seeing now is there are these sort of imagined solutions that are, we're told, simple. We can just go and do that and it will change. Oh, never mind that no one's ever done that in the history of the world before, or that this source of energy hasn't yet proven itself to do the things that you're claiming it would do. Trust us. Let's just go and do those things. That's not good enough. It doesn't pass the test of scrutiny. Things that can't be proven are not going to provide the certainty that we need. Not to say that innovation shouldn't continually be pursued to find new ways of doing things. But for the most part, the kinds of solutions that we know are workable are ones that in Canada we are capable of pursuing. And that could include critical minerals that are needed for all kinds of emerging energy types. That's a very good strength for Canada. Forestry, we have the ability to get into areas like biofuels, to continue to be a supplier of lumber and fibers to the world, whether it's for things like medical gowns and masks that we're talking about now. There's some pretty interesting work being done in that area. But when it comes to the petrochemical industry, huge opportunities there. Same with hydrogen, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be seeing a lot of discussion on hydrogen as a fuel coming out of Alberta in the next few weeks. We've seen some interesting moves there. The federal government has already indicated its commitment. So we don't have to sell this one too hard. It's already happening. But I think how we integrate it into the overall economy is a discussion that needs to take place. We also think that small nuclear is going to be a solution to greening the economy. Being able to place this kind of green energy that doesn't create emissions where it's needed most, including in remote places where you can't easily get a transmission line in, or you would prefer not to burn as much fossil fuel as now. And I think that's one of the biggest levers to how we can lower national greenhouse gas emissions in Canada. And I think it's also one that people who call themselves environmentalists oppose, because the last thing they want is to see the oil sands be successful and green. That's a threat. So I think that we do have to just be very strategic about how these things are approached and ensure that the potential they have to create a lot of good for Canada isn't forgotten. Because if we have this determination to continue to push and innovate, we can get through it, and it won't always be easy.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, one of the biggest government projects ever, the Site C Dam on the Peace River in northern BC. The work was halted. They said they had to do some seismic upgrades. Somebody's saying it's an earthquake-prone area. What the hell are you doing building dams there? Should we be concerned?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's very much a fiscal concern over the overruns. We don't know what that cost is right now because they're rebaselining the whole project. It's going to take some time, and given the complexity scale of a project like this, you need to take that time. So it'll be probably a few weeks, judging by recent reports, before we know that. And it's, in my opinion, it's too early to jump to any conclusions. Let's not forget that this dam went through rigorous environmental engineering processes and oversight to be approved in the first place. It wasn't willy-nilly, let's build a dam there. There was all of the expertise you should expect apply to it. The factor of the coronavirus epidemic is one that I think could be quite large in it, because when you look at the sequencing of a project like this, you have certain things that have to happen one after the other. Sometimes the windows to do certain things are seasonal in nature. They depend on wildlife activity, or they depend on the flows of rivers. And so the builders of the dam are subject to all of that, and not just the reality of the phenomenon, but also the extremely tight regulations applying to every single thing they do on the land there. So if because of COVID they missed a window to get into some area or do some action, that's not just losing a day's work or a week's work. That could upset the entire multi-year calendar for the event if it's a crucial piece. And I think that is something that, just reading the report, it looks like that is a very large factor, but we don't know. And then as to the stability of the landforms, that goes back to the quality of the engineering work done, in the pre-engineering work and the engineering work that was performed. If proper controls were in place and people were doing their jobs, you're spotting all of the relevant factors that relate to it. Is there some great unknown? I haven't heard it said that there is, and we just, I think, have to wait and see. So it's there's no question that the occurrence of this budget blowout has rekindled a whole lot of Site C skepticism and opposition that occurred or existed primarily before the project was approved by 2 consecutive BC governments. And it's maybe giving satisfaction to some people that it's encountering these issues, but I think we don't have the facts at this point in time to declare this to be a failure or a bust or anything like that. It's unfortunate, but COVID has brought a lot of unfortunate things to the world.
And should people be worried if the dam will be safe or not?
Well, again, that's a question for the engineers and the regulatory processes, whether it's safe or not. That's a type of dam. This Site C dam is a different type of dam than some of the mega dams that we're used to seeing. It's not going to look like those. It's a coffer dam. It has a very different structure and engineering and use of river flow. So I think just that alone may make it more suited to the landform that it's located in. And so I don't think anyone who's downstream of it should be worried that it's going to in the future, once it's built, fall apart. That would be irresponsible speculation, I would say. The necessity of the dam is driven by the need for clean power, green power. I know that there are some saying we don't need any green electricity. Well, that runs counter to all of the trends that are going on in the country, where electrification of vehicles is one of the major changes happening in transportation. Also, we have municipalities that are telling people, we want you to stop using natural gas to heat your homes and water. We want you to use electricity instead. So if millions and millions of people over the next 20, 30 years are making this change, where are they going to get the electricity? Look how long it's taken to build Site C. It's been thought about for decades, and then it was 10 or a dozen years of process, and only then could it be built. So for every dam that has to be built, or every large electricity facility of whatever kind, you have to go through a similar lengthy process. How on earth are we going to meet the demands of society as we decarbonize over time? That's a really important question, but it tends to be just simply ignored or brushed aside by those who simply want to oppose one particular project.
Yeah, and for all those people who think it's going to be so much cheaper to commute in an electric car rather than one using gasoline where there's high taxes on it, well, no doubt when everybody's in an electric car, they're going to start the government needs money and they'll start charging you per kilometer. So
Yeah.
It's not going to be the cheap way to get around you think it is.
A zero emissions car is not zero weight. It's still, the mass of it still causes damage to roadways, and that's the main use or major use of our fuel taxes, to pay for those roads and bridges that need constant maintenance. So yeah, that's a great point, Jim.
The government doesn't talk about it, but if you just put your brain to it for half a second, it's pretty logical. Stuart, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks, Jim.
My guest has been Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the ResourceWorks Society. You can check out his website, resourceworks.com. You can find him on Twitter at SJMuir. If you have any questions for Stewart or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter at HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.